You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, themichigansportstruthpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Staples Media. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith and Frank Vasner. Ed Smith, how was your week and how are you doing tonight?
Week's been okay. Today was all right, but I'm just happy to be here. Quite motivated to speak tonight for certain.
Awesome. Well, Frank, welcome back. Congrats on the gig, by the way. How you doing?
Well, thank you, Taylor. I've been keeping pretty occupied, despite I've been in the middle of transitioning jobs. Still trying to make sure I can put money in my pockets and stay motivated and stay busy. Maybe kind of a crazy one day, but, I'm very grateful to be back on with both you and Ed so we can talk about what we normally talk about.
Awesome. Well, we got a lot to talk about here tonight, but first follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow the returning Frank Vasner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vasner. Got some Cubs at Tigers live coverage right now. The Tigers lead the Cubs 7-3 going into the top of the 8th inning. They got swept by the Chicago White Sox last week in a 4-game set. They lost Thursday's game 9-0. God, that was ugly. The pitching sucked and the hitting sucked in that game. But last Friday, the Tigers finally beat the Indians 10-5 at Progressive Field. Isaac Paredes, a grand slam, his first Major League home run to put the Tigers up in the lead for the first time against the Indians in about quite a while. Their 20-game losing streak ended against those Tribe. They came back from down 5-0 early. Michael Fulmer gave up all 5 runs, but the Tigers provided a lot of offense to complete what was a hell of a comeback. And then Saturday they lost 6-1, but Matthew Boyd didn't give up any runs until he left like 2 runners on. He was charged with 2 runs in that game when John Schreiber blew it all up. Ron Gardenhire brought him in at the wrong time. John Schreiber's not very good. And then the Tigers fought back. They won 7-4. Tariq Skubal, 1 earned run and 3 hits over 2 1/3 innings. There were home runs galore. Jose Cisnero got the save because Joe Jimenez gave up a 3-run home run to Greg Allen in the bottom of the 9th. But Tigers still went 7-4, so that's a save for Cisnero, his first save of the season. And then the Tigers return home to get smashed by those Cubs, which they're playing right now, 9-3 on Monday. Casey Mize threw a 1-2-3 first inning to start his first career home game in the majors with the Tigers. But the second and third innings were rough. He didn't throw enough splitters like he did the first inning. But the Tigers fought back and won 7-1 last night. That's Tuesday. Spencer Turnbull earned a win, 5 2/3 innings, no earned runs. Jonathan Scope a grand slam. So 2 grand slams over the past week since our last episode, gentlemen. And now it is now 7-3. Tigers in the top of the 8th. Gregory Soto on the mound against Kyle Schwarber, who bounces out to Jonathan Scope, 1 up, 1 down. So, guys, not too shabby of a week by the Tigers. We'll start with Ed, and then we'll turn it over to Frank. Ed, what are your thoughts on the Tigers thus far with those 2 grand slams and Matt Boyd finally having a solid outing, although he lasted just 5 1/3.
Not too shabby, actually. Taylor would be an understatement. They've actually have had quite a bit of a dreadful past couple of weeks. They've gone in the span of the last 10 games, 3-7. I mean, you mentioned the loss, likes of the White Sox to the Cleveland Indians. They got smacked around by the Cubs the other night. So it's good to see good moments like this, but I think we've seen more realization over the past couple of weeks that that first week was way more of an aberration. And this is what this team really is. They have pieces. You see the pieces that are there, especially with our young pitchers, young rotation led by Casey Mize, of course. You see what guys like Turnbull and other young players are doing, as well as the new cogs that we've added to the lineup, to the bottom of the lineup. But again, it's not a full, complete process. So again, it's not a surprise that they're second to last in the division right now. But what they're doing tonight, it is you take the good whenever you can. So for example, on night on this one, Miguel Cabrera, I think he's now 3 for 4, or at least 2 for 3. He's got an RBI.
3 for 4.
3 for 4 with a ribby. He's got his batting average up to 219 now, which is dreadful when you think about it. But you also got to remember that Cabrera's is usually known to have a slow start to his seasons. And I guess even you shifted the months and you changed the circumstances, the outcome is still the same. Death taxes, Cabrera has slow starts this season. But it's good to see him get ahead and in terms of what Casey Mize is going through or went through with his first couple of starts. A bit of a night and day difference, which is what you want to see. You want to see how he can persevere through adversity, through those tough moments when things are not always going his way. This is what you call, hey, rookie, welcome to the league. This is your welcoming call. You want to call it a ritual, trial by fire, whatever it is. This is what you go through on your first go-around through the big leagues. So it's good for him to get that experience, and we've been clamoring for him to get that chance to get called up earlier so he can have more experience in moments and situations and scenarios like this. But it's better late than never, I would say. So there's that, and when you factor it all in, it's just, hey, it's been a rough stretch. But they're just trying to go through the motions at this point because at this point it's looking more and more obvious. They're not making the playoffs, but that's okay. That wasn't the expectation going into this year anyway. The expectation was to be at least a little bit more improved than the absolute ceiling, not ceiling, but the absolute basement of the floor that you were at before you're currently at or trying to get to at now.
Yeah, and Wilson Contreras strikes out, and now Hernan Perez rounds out to Goodrum at short, and that's a 1-2-3 inning for Gregory Soto. We remember Hernan Perez playing with the Tigers, of course, when he absolutely sucked. And one of your rants, your old classic rants on Blog Talk Radio when the Tigers lost in extra innings to the Kansas City Royals 5 years ago, and when Brad Ausmus was their manager, and heading into the bottom of the 10th, the Tigers were bunting to load the bases with nobody out for Hernan Perez, who was hitting 111 at that time. I still have that memory popping up again. And yeah, I would love to listen to that again. But let me touch on Cabrera. Right now, Miguel Cabrera is hitting 219 with an OPS of 660 right now. So Miguel Cabrera's stats right now are improving thus far.
Yeah, but they could be still way, way better.
Yeah.
You can't really turn on and off the switch like you did, circa 2011, 12, 13, that kind of thing. But, at least a little bit something better to make us feel a little bit better about that contract that we're paying you. My God.
Yeah. Frank, follow up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll kind of echo what Ed said. I wasn't expecting the Tigers to make the playoffs this year, and I had said previously I was looking for the young guys to improve individually, and I think we've seen that. We've seen Casey Mize go through his welcome to the MLB moments, and he's going to continue to get better. Isaac Paredes, I've been very impressed with his play. He's continuing to get better as well. And even guys like Tariq Skubal, well, he's done well in his moments too, and some of the newer additions to the roster, like Jonathan Scope, who he had a bit of a hot start to the season. He's kind of tailed off, but, he's been pretty decent. And, losing C.J. Cron for the season to a knee injury definitely stings. But you know what? There's not a lot you can do about injuries, and even Miguel Cabrera, I know he's has rough start, but at least he's starting to get better a little bit. I don't expect him to be Miguel Cabrera from 2012, but you know, if he can get to the point where he can hit the ball at a decent clip and maybe even reach his 500th career home run, I'll be satisfied with that. But, you know, there's still a lot that this team has to go through to get back to being a contender. I mean, there's nice pieces there. Obviously, Mize, Paredes, and even guys who we haven't seen yet, like a pitching standpoint, like the Matt Mannings and the Alex Faedos. We might see one of those guys come September, because I don't think this team's going to be in the thick of any playoff race, so why not give those guys a chance to show what they can do? I mean, God willing, maybe even get a Spencer Torkelson up so we can see what he can do as well. I mean, you've already lost C.J. Cron for the season, and Candelario, I think, is more of a third baseman than a first baseman. But so maybe you bring him up and give him a chance to show what he's got. It doesn't hurt anything. I mean, letting them just sit around and do nothing doesn't help their development at all. What's the risk? So that's really my thoughts. I mean, you pretty much take the good when you get it, and then if bad things happen, you don't really see it. It's like, oh well, bounce back, learn from it, be better the next time.
Right, that's normal. And Nico Goodrum, speaking of home, is 1 for 4. He leads off the bottom half of the inning for the Tigers to lead the Cubs 7-3. This is live coverage of this game on the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Stables Media. Inside is the next pitch, is now 3-1 on Nico Goodrum, as I'm viewing this on Fox Sports Detroit. So Ed and I are going to let you give your thoughts on what we discussed in Moss's new article, Mike Valenti's Ellen problem. Frank, I don't know if you read it or not, but if you did, I think I'm pretty sure you took more time to read it, like over the past full week, since you were absent last week. So any homework that you've done on that article since you've read it, Frank?
Well, I actually did give it a bit of a read over the weekend while I was house sitting for a friend of mine who was in Florida. And, I mean, plus I also even read some of Terry's blogs, too, because I wanted to make sure I did my homework and got everybody's side of the story. Now, given what I saw Moss write, I mean, if there is indisputable truth that Mike was a complete AH, then shame on him. However, and as much as I don't like to say this, I'm not sure if anything is going to happen to him from a career standpoint, because, for one, there's no competition in the city for sports talk radio, and why would you get rid of the one bringing in your best ratings and bringing in the money? Because that would be a suicide for the station as a whole. But I digress. And of course, Terry, in one of his blogs, I probably should have shared it with you guys, he said that he left. It wasn't because of Mike, but it sounded like it was definitely more of his health as well, but also kind of being there. And also he put into an episode where he didn't watch a Michigan State-Wisconsin game and chose to watch a NASCAR race. Well, that's his decision. I don't think he should have been chastised for it. But you know what? If he chose to do that, okay. I don't think he should have made a big deal. I don't think anything should have been said. I said, I didn't watch the game, move on from it. There's no sense in...
And part of the interruption besides wasn't the... Oh. That's okay, part of the interruption, Frank, but wasn't that like a game where MSU got waxed by Wisconsin anyway? So I think Terry, you know, there's a good on him that he didn't waste his afternoon watching that.
I wouldn't remember exactly what game that would have been, to be quite honest with you. No, I think it might have been 2017, to be quite honest with you.
It was close.
Yeah, I want to say it was during 2017, because I know that's when Michigan State was not near the top of the Big Ten. I think they were, I think they finished in the same range as Michigan did, but I remember Michigan kind of went on a 5-day run to the Big Ten tournament, because I think that was the same year they had those plane issues going to D.C., if I'm not mistaken.
Right. And then they got smoked again in 2019 in Madison, Wisconsin, the same place, Kohl Center. Or not Kohl Center. That's the basketball arena. College basketball arena. My bad. But anyway, Bonifacio flies to center. That's going to be the first out of the inning after Nico Goodrum recently drew a walk. Anyway, that leads us to our TMSTP Story Vault segment from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on April 20th, 2017. Terry Foster retires and Mike Valenti has blood on his hands. Earlier this afternoon, Terry Foster announced that he was retiring from his radio gig on 97.1 The Ticket after unsuccessfully returning to the airwaves following 2 strokes he had suffered last year. It was a shock to many, but not to those who had been reading either this website or my Twitter feed since Foster's return in January. I predicted this outcome back in early February after being deluged with emails, tweets, and Facebook messages from fans of the Mike Valenti and Foster program. I received literally over 100 messages from listeners bombing Valenti for his treatment of Foster, while the former Detroit News writer tried to ease his way back into the show he had co-hosted for over a decade. I even wrote an article detailing Foster's struggles with reading live advertising copy and wondered if CBS Radio was being dishonest with their clients regarding what they were actually purchasing. I am not just writing this to pat myself on the back, although I love doing that, but to let you know I've been pretty dialed in on the story for months now, just in case you want to question what I'm going to write next. Terry Foster can see and write whatever he wants about Valenti now that he is retired, but it is Valenti's behavior which expedited this process. Just look back at what I wrote on February 6th regarding Valenti's treatment of his longtime broadcast partner from the old at Jeff Moss DSR suspended handle on Twitter on February 7, 2017. Quote, speculation among industry insiders is that Valenti is trying to make a point with 97.1 management, including program director James Powers, may I add, with his treatment of Foster. If Valenti pushes Foster out, the thinking is a national search will commence to find his replacement, not in-house, unquote. Maven at bat. 1 out, Guterman second, probably a stolen base or a wild pitch or whatever. Valenti and the show's producer, Mike Sullivan, were horrendous to Foster upon his return. They were abusive, denigrating, and had zero patience for the fight Foster was waging. As I wrote back in January, even I have laid off Foster after warring with him for years, it became quite obvious that Valenti viewed this as an opportunity to rid himself of Foster once and for all. Look, I would have had no problem if Valenti had used his clout pre-stroke to get rid of Foster, either because the New York studio gangsta thought T-Foss wasn't doing enough show prep or that he was diverting the show to areas Valenti didn't want it to go. But waiting until after the guy had 2 brain episodes to make his power move, well, it's the story of Valenti's life. From originally wanting to work with a punching bag in Foster to how he ended his longtime relationship with his ex-girlfriend when he met his current wife, to refusing to leave the comfort of his 97.1 studio and his 14-second delay button in order to burnish his tough guy act, and of course abandoning Twitter because of some real meanings. It's his legacy. All of this is his typical modus operandi. He is a devout coward, and this latest move is his Mona Lisa. I spoke to someone in the radio business who advised me that mundane tasks like opening a door had become an issue for Foster, and that it was sad to see. So when Valenti states that Foster didn't want to be treated differently on the air, as he stated today on the air, just remember the thought of Foster struggling to hold a door open. Yeah, maybe Foster made that comment, but where is your humanity, Mike? On an almost daily basis, I would receive alerts from my followers that either Valenti or his hand-picked boy producer, Sullivan, was tormenting Foster or issues that clearly were related to the strokes, or both guys, may I add. One would have to wonder if the show's former producer, Jim Bentley, would have stood by while the pair treated Foster so horribly. As we go to the ninth inning, looks like a strikeout to me. Valenti actually stated on 97.1 this afternoon that he wasn't patient enough with Foster post-stroke. Is that your guilty conscience speaking? Are you going through a 12-step program? Maybe the next person with whom you should make amends is your ex-girlfriend. Get out of here with that nonsense after you got your way. You might be fooling your listeners, but you're not fooling me. I'm sure some of you are surprised that I am defending Foster. It's no secret that this website has a long, sordid history with a Central Michigan University grad going back to the days when I was a fan of the Sports Doctors program on WDFN with Art Regner and Foster. The first local notoriety the DSR received was when Foster wrote an article about this site for the Detroit News. And of course, there was the time that Foster tried to go partners with us and join our venture by suggesting we supplement the website with a paper version, a sports version of the Metro Times. He even once wrote an article for the DSR that his news bosses, the Detroit News bosses, immediately made us take down. But everything changed when Foster discovered Twitter. His tweets were so terrible that I couldn't refrain from bombing him. This led to an all-out ugly twat war while Foster was on the air one afternoon that culminated with him calling me a racist. You can call me a lot of things, many of them deserved, but a racist is not one of them. I am a bleeding heart, Bernie Sanders supporting liberal who stopped doing my weekly appearances with Ryan Schuling because I refused to appear on a show with a Donald Trump supporter. I am to the left of Ta-Nehisi Coates when it comes to African Americans receiving reparations for slavery and Jim Crow. Calling me a racist was the end of any civil relationship between the two of us, and I declare a fatwa that didn't end until Foster's first stroke. I was vicious in retaliation over his false label, and I constantly destroyed Foster over his awful sports takes and many failed restaurant ventures. It's true, you can even Google it. But I even felt bad about the stroke and how it hindered Foster from doing his job. It could not have come at a worse time, as less than a year prior, Foster had been forced out by the Detroit News. They had given him an ultimatum that he either take the Pistons beat gig or accept a buyout. Of course, Foster couldn't follow the Pistons on the road 41 times a year and do the 97.1 show, so he picked radio. And then approximately 7 months later, he had the first stroke. If that timing wasn't bad enough, Foster's oldest daughter is on the verge of entering college. Foster recently proudly announced that his firstborn got into Stanford, and I'm pretty sure that's not a cheap school to attend. It's all very sad as the media personality is only 58 years old. He went from 2 lucrative media jobs to none, and whatever buyout he allegedly received from CBS Radio or Entercom, or whatever it's called these days, surely isn't sufficient for a man of his age. But I am sure that deep down, Valenti is extremely happy with this turn of events. He got rid of Foster, and now he can do the show alone with his yes man Sullivan chiming in with brilliant takes such as the Michigan basketball team plane crash being an overblown story. People are already speculating over who will replace Foster, but I don't see anyone filling that chair until football season at the earliest. Keep in mind, guys, Rico Beard is now that second seater. I'm guessing they will conduct a national search, but at the end of the day, Valenti and his agent Mort Meisner will probably demand that Jeff Rieger get that cushy spot. Again, it turned out to be Rico Beard. Rieger was the fill-in when Foster was rehabilitating and is a client of Meisner as well. And Kermit the Rieger is a good fit for both 97.1 and Valenti. He will come cheap, and the ass-clown coward, Valenti, will get another dopey punching bag to battle. Only Alan Colmes could fill that job any better, and he is dead. I kind of get why Valenti hates humanity so much. He owns a mirror. That's the end of that article, so we're going to turn over to Ed first, as usual, and then we'll turn it over to Frank. Ed, like we talked about last week, Valenti and his protege, Mike Sullivan, abused Terry Foster, who wanted to retire and did, and then Jeff Moss predicted in that article that Jeff Rieger would be Foster's replacement, but not the case. It turned out to be Rico Beard, and like you pointed out last week, both Valenti and Beard deserved each other. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard to deny exactly which side is being more facetious or telling a fib or is not claiming something that isn't true. When you look at the proof, when you look at the detail, when you look at how Moss went over this with a fine-tooth comb, it is not too surprising when you consider how Valenti presents himself on the air to begin with. When you couple that with what we know about him, when you take away the microphone, you take away the studio, who he really is, it's not surprising. It's disappointing when you consider the fact that he's been on the air with Terry for 15 years. Terry essentially, again, brought him into the game itself out of college. It wasn't that he discovered radio. No. Terry helped brought him into that. Okay. So he should be forever grateful, in my view, to Terry in that regard. And I hope he is for his sake. I don't wish ill on the man, other than the fact that I did find his episode with the Flaming Tomahawk to be hilariously karmic. Sorry if that makes me sound like a bad person, but I don't care. Other than that, then yeah, it's quite funny now that even after all this time, even Sully is gone. Sully always sounded like a worse of a lapdog for Mike for Valenti on the air than even Matt Derry did, and that was quite irritating to hear at times. So I wonder who he's got, wants to be his next boy stable, if you will, to be his next whipping post. And like I said, Rico Beard, it's not surprising. I think this is the kind of person or partner that Valenti wanted all along. He got close to Terry, but Terry was far too neutral or the more opposite side. This one, he has his ace. He has his parallel for certain. So, like I said last week, those two deserve each other.
Yeah, definitely. Frank, any follow-up on this?
kind of want to echoing what Ed said with Rico Beard being on. It seems like they're two. Though he and Mike are two of the same. They agree on mostly everything. I mean, look, I know they're both Michigan State grads. That's really not why I think they're agreeing on anything, but I think there's just a lot there because I've heard both of them separately, and they kind of take similar approaches to stuff. I mean, I think the only difference that I may have noticed is one of them said that the Portland Trailblazers would beat the LA Lakers, and that has not been the case. So, but that's another topic for another time. And this is what I would say to Mike if I could. You should always be grateful for those who brought you into business like this, and never burn bridges with them. I mean, heck, I'm grateful that Taylor, you discovered me and brought me on with you, and I've been with you since I think it's 2017.
Yep.
And I know there's times where I haven't been able to be on because of work commitments, but you know what? But if there comes a day where I have to move on, you guys will always have me. I'll always be grateful to you and Ed, and you're always are gonna have a special place in my heart. I'll always be grateful to those who brought you into the game.
Yep, definitely, and I need the both of you as I always do. Tigers are now leading the Cubs 7-5. Still nobody out runners on the corners. Buck Farmer giving up those 2 runs. Nico Horner with an RBI single scoring David Bote, and then Albert Almora driving Horner home with a double. And now Horner's on third, and now an infield single. Then an infield single for Happ. An infield single for Happ is now 3 for 4. Buck Farmer still hasn't gotten it out. Now Anthony Rizzo being a threat. Farmer throws too high. It's now 2-0 on Anthony Rizzo. Buck Farmer's getting himself and the Tigers in some minor trouble.
It's nothing.
Nobody out.
It's just nothing so quintessential Tigers bullpen. Even them for them to ruin what was a good moment between us as co-hosts. I was just getting ready to say thank you to the Frank and to you, to Taylor as well. But yeah, perfect timing by Buck Farmer, a guy I cannot stand. And here he is now up 2-0 on the guy, getting ready to walk the bases loaded, and still nobody out. Good God.
2-1. 2-1 now, just throwing on the inside corner. It was a fastball. It was a simple one, but Anthony Rizzo decided not to bite on it, and he paid for it dearly. It's strike one. Now, the 2-1, it's driven into center field, and it's going to be way back, and it's going to be caught by Victor Reyes, a leaping catch, but not robbing Rizzo of a home run, but it's a sacrifice fly nonetheless. Only driven Reyes to the warning track. It's a sacrifice fly. It's now 7-6 with just a man on first. That's Happ, and 1 out now. So Victor Reyes, he made a running catch earlier in the game. He's now got 2 running catches. He can run pretty fast in that outfield and track those fly balls down the way I've been seeing him play. But the Tigers' lead is now down to 1 run. Javier Baez up now as Happ is forced back to first on a pickoff attempt. Safe is inevitably the call. Javier Baez a single and a sacrifice fly and an RBI. 1 through 3 is Javier Baez. Buck Farmer to the stretch. First pitch coming up. Here it comes, and it's a swing and a foul back. It's now 0-1. The Pistons have fallen to 7th in the NBA draft lottery. We knew something like this would happen. Like I said a couple months ago or a month ago, the draft lottery concept needs to be removed permanently. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it or drown my sorrows away. I'm going to be mad. I'm going to continue to be mad and stand up. And now here's a fly ball to left. That's going to be out number 2. Happ retreats to first, and now there's 2 out. Buck Farmer gave up a home run last night in a 7-1 win for the Tigers against those Cubs. Buck Farmer is pitching the 9th inning 2 nights in a row. Kyle Schwarber up next, 1 for 4 with a solo jack. He's another threat that can give the Cubs an 8-7 lead. Well, let's keep an eye on him. But we'll turn it over to Ed first, and then we'll turn it over to Frank. This draft lottery concept is driving me nuts. It keeps pushing the Red Wings and Pistons down.
It's quite funny when you look at how things went. You would think of how both teams went about under the old way of system, how things have gone. Both teams would have been at least a top 5, if not top 3 pick. At least top 3, if not getting that number 1 overall, or at least close to it. Especially in the case of the Red Wings, who got absolutely jogged. But still, it is what it is. You make the best of what you got. as for the Pistons case, this one I'm not particularly too upset about. Would I've liked to have had a chance to get either LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards or James Wiseman? Sure, absolutely. You'd kill to have any one of those kids on your team. But it just wasn't meant to be. But I'm being cautiously optimistic for a reason. But I guess I'm looking forward more down the line, more so the long-term goal. If you want to call it a process, go ahead. Considering the fact that the last one in Philly just went belly up, why don't we just start a new one in Detroit? I'm thinking, if we end up with a combination of either and or Cade Cunningham or Imani Bates, by the way, the Tigers just won.
A comebacker caught by Buck Farmer. A line drive by Kyle Schwarber, and Farmer makes a glove save and a beauty to end the game.
Wonderful.
7-6 Tigers win.
Wonderful. They get a good win. Another one. Good for them. Now back to what I was saying. Either Cade Cunningham or my personal one I'm looking forward to, Imani Bates, within the next couple or 3 years, depending on how things go, especially now with this current climate, that's going to, without question, have permanent ripple effects and shifts across all the sports world. And we're going to get to other certain ripple effects in a moment, not just within our topics, but I will in my closing statement, hopefully. But yeah, if I can foresee a future where the Pistons get Imani Bates in the draft, similar to how the Cavs got LeBron all those years back, that sort of thing, or how the Bulls got Derrick Rose, I'm cool with that. Give me Imani Bates, I'm even.
Yep, there you go. Frank, any follow-up on the Pistons pursuing Imani Bates?
Well, I'll start off by this year's lottery. I mean, I wasn't really thrilled that they fell to 7, but I don't think it was as big of a gut punch as the Red Wings falling to 4th in their draft lottery. I mean, look, Taylor, I know you stated how much you feel about draft lotteries. I'm not a fan of them either. I mean, if it was up to me, it should just be the teams that have 3 worst records and just draw them up for who gets the top pick. So you don't have any of this crazy voodoo stuff or whatever. But that's just my thoughts on that. So yep. I mean, it stinks that they won't have a chance to get an Anthony Edwards or James Wiseman or LaMelo Ball. But I still think they'll end up with a nice player. I was looking at some of the previous picks of drafts prior that went 7 overall, and the Pistons did have one back in 2010. That was Greg Monroe, who ended up being a decent player. He didn't become a superstar, but he was decent. But some notable 7 picks. Steph Curry, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. But there's also a few that were kind of not so good, like Ben McLemore, who was picked by the Kings, and he ended up kind of flopping, even though he's latched on with the Houston Rockets and been playing some quality bench minutes. So hopefully they can get this right, and hopefully Troy Weaver can find somebody good with his first year as the GM of the Pistons, and who knows, maybe down the line they will be able to win the Imani Bates sweepstakes, because I'm proud to say that I have seen young Mr. Bates play, and he is every bit as good as advertised, and I sure would love to see him stay in Michigan and when it's time for him to go to the NBA.
Yeah, that would be like a good omen or a similarity omen. But let me touch on those 3, that 3 bottom team shuffle concept of the draft lottery. That shouldn't happen either, because even if the Red Wings were 1 and it came down to just that, chances are they would be still pushed back to number 2 and number 3, and I would still be irritated. Just remove the whole damn thing permanently right now. I do not care.
Taylor, I do get what you're saying. But I think what I said, I've had conversations with people that say that do it like that. That way you avoid teams who petulantly tank and try and do what the Philadelphia 76ers did with their process, which little addendum to that is ownership kind of screwed that up. When they actually had guys who they drafted, they'd get in, they decided, let's go crazy and start trading them and go all in so we can win. And they ended up I thought they got rid of the GM who started the process, Sam Hinkie, way too soon. They brought in Jerry Colangelo and his burner Twitter accounts, and then they had Elton Brand on the show, and that was kind of a joke as well. So I think my belief is if the whole process thing and rebuilding, everybody's got to be on the same page, and you can't have ownership trying to meddle with it. Otherwise, you end up with things blowing up in your face more often than not. I just wanted to share that.
Right. I understand that. Speaking of the Red Wings, they have signed forward Robbi Fabbri to a 2-year extension, the former Stanley Cup champion. That 2-year extension was worth a $2.95 million average annual value, so it's going to be $5.9 million total. Not a bad signing, at least, by the captain, Steve Yzerman, their general manager. We'll give it over to Frank this time, and then we'll give it over to Ed. Frank, not a bad signing, like I just said. So go ahead.
Yeah, this was a signing I advocated for bringing Robbie Fabbri back in the fold, because he really flourished as a result of coming over in a trade where they sent Jacob De La Rose to St. Louis. And I think I would say that's probably the best trade deal that Steve Yzerman has made so far. And he brings him back on a very cap-friendly deal, doesn't eat up a ton of space. Kind of says, you know what, give him a chance to build off that, and maybe he can keep helping and being a key part in the rebuild. So, good move by Steve.
Yep. Ed, you're up next. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I got to agree with Frank on this one. This was a move I wholeheartedly approve of. Fabry was almost an immediate contributor, and it stayed constant the entire way he was here throughout his tenure. Well, after the trade, I should say. So this is a move I'm definitely like, because I think it keeps the familiarity of what worked. Number one, you don't want to get rid of that. And two, if you consider him being one of your big potential long-term pieces, or as a potential trade chip down the line to get an even bigger prize, you got to think a couple steps ahead of the game here. So don't think that thought has not pondered or crossed Yzerman's mind at least once. So you always got to take that into consideration. So all in all, I definitely approve of this move for certain.
Definitely. Let's shift over to the Lions. They have decided no fans in their first 2 home games, and then they canceled practice yesterday to address the shooting of Jake Blake in Wisconsin. And Ed, you were going to touch on that very, very tragic occurrence. Just another unnecessary police shooting of Jacob Blake this time. It's just aggravating.
Another name, unfortunately, you have to add to the countless others that we've been crying out and saying and referencing and telling stories of. Like, it is an unending list of what we as Black Americans in this country have to go through on an almost daily basis now, it seems. And so with the Lions making this decision, and by the way, you notice it was a united front. It was a true team front. You saw players, coaches, Matt Patricia at the forefront. Everybody, both black and white, standing in solidarity in this regard. It was quite welcoming to see, quite pleasant to see, and I think it helped kickstart what and quite ironically, what we're coming onto the air tonight to, in terms of what we all saw across the entire sports world. The Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA boycotting, not playing a playoff game against the Orlando Magic. That started a domino effect where you saw essentially the Rockets and the Thunder, they decided not to play. Then all of a sudden, LeBron James, he voices his thoughts of it on Twitter with a very profane but profound tweet as well. All of a sudden, all the NBA games, they're postponed. Now all of a sudden, you see in baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers, they decide to postpone their game against the Reds. The Seattle Mariners, they're not taking part. The San Francisco Giants and the LA Dodgers, they're not taking part. And even now across even more sports, again, keep going on and on. MLS, the Major League Soccer, the WNBA, all WNBA games flat out postponed tonight. Such a true united front with peaceful protesting, imagery, solidarity, and it echoes, I think, what I've been trying to say and stress out, that we need more growing solidarity with all of our allies, especially those that don't have the same pigment or skin color, or that don't go through the same experiences that we go through. Show sympathy enough to where you can post a little cute hashtag on your feed. It's not going to go back to normal. Do more, invest more, show more with communities, with people, with interactions, with conversations, do more to help bring more power and bring more change to what we need. And I think it's quite evident that we see and continue to see examples of that. You saw what the Lions that they did yesterday. Now you're seeing the formerly known as Washington Redskins. They're not holding practice tomorrow. Other teams, I guarantee you, it's going to start. It's going to spread. You talk about, quite ironic to use that term spread nowadays, but it seems that this reckoning of pandemic of COVID-19 somehow awakened everyone's eyes to the other pandemic that's been going on in this country for literally centuries. And it's about time more people recognize it. And I will finish my thoughts on it by saying this. What I mentioned before about showing evidence, growth, development, change, I give you one perfect case point example. Kelly Stafford, Matthew Stafford's wife, who, by the way, about, 2 weeks ago, this flew completely under all of our radar here, but she posted on Instagram a photo of her that detailed her and her husband donating $350,000 to UGA Athletics, to their alma mater. That's great for social justice. That's great. But the caption, the story that she put to it was so terrific, I had to share it with you, where she essentially apologizes to Colin Kaepernick. As we all know, she had her own thoughts regarding what Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for, what it meant in regards to the anthem, what her views were, whether political or not. I gave my own thoughts of it, Taylor. You heard me talk about it when we were on Blog Talk. Long story short, she made an apology. She admitted that she was wrong. She said that her eyes have been opened, her mind, her heart. And if this is truly genuine change that we're seeing, I say good on Kelly. I am proud of her for showcasing it. And the fact that she says and states out that, yes, these are the problems, systemic racism, it's not going away, but let's work on that. Let's have the conversations. Let's change on that. And the fact that she ended that post with the very 3 simple words of Black Lives Matter shows me that it's never quite too late to show genuine change, genuine growth, genuine development, genuine evolution as a human being if it's there in the right places. So for Kelly, I don't know what awakening that she had went through herself. Maybe it was in regards to her husband's false positive or whatever the case may be. Seeing all of this unfold in front of her, maybe it opened her eyes to something that she's never experienced before in her life, or hasn't gone to ask anyone what they want through. Either way it goes, I appreciate her for making that commitment to show that, hey, I can change, let's all change this. So that's all we ask for. Show us better equality. Not more, not less, just equal. And let's make that change together.
Yes, let's equal everyone in this world. Everyone is human. Frank, anything to add?
Wow. Ed, I'm really not sure what much more I can say after that, but first, let me say well done. And secondly, I have been raised with the belief of 2 things. One, believe there is good in this world, and I do. I know there's a lot of bad things that happen, but that doesn't mean everything is bad. But in order to believe that there is good in this world, we must be the good in this world. That starts with me. That starts with everybody. We need to be the good in this world, and we need to be a light unto darkness, because darkness cannot exist where there is light.
There you go. Just a couple quick notes before we get to the closing statement segment, and they both have to do with the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team and football team. Men's basketball head coach Juwan Howard has decided to stay put despite news of him being a nominee for an NBA head coach. And then the football team is 16th in the early college football AP poll. And by the way, the Big Ten in terms of football is aiming towards having their games played in domes, or at least one dome, may I add, during the winter time where temperatures are going to be frigid out there with snow and stuff, much safer indoors. So we'll go over with Ed, and then we'll turn over to Frank, and then we'll get to the closing statement segment. Ed, you're up first. Go right ahead and step up to the plate.
First and foremost, glad to see and hear that Coach Howard is sticking around. I knew pretty much with about 99.9% certainty he wasn't going anywhere. I mean, for God's sake, the man was in tears, literal tears, breaking down, crying as introductory press conference. He almost did it again when he was talking to Jalen Rose about it on ESPN. This is a man who genuinely loves the fact that he has this job. He wants to be here in terms of having his family around him, and not just that, but continuing the legacy of what he experienced for his days at the Fab Five, and also seeing that what was revitalized under Coach Beilein, continuing that and nurturing that. You don't want to go backwards of what you did once you did the sanctions. You want to go forward. So the key to that is more consistency, and the fact that Coach Howard is staying around is the consistency that's needed. Football team, I'm fine with the ranking. Okay, you got to prove it to me. You got to earn it. Okay, before I consider you top 10 material, let alone borderline top 4, are they a playoff contender, that type of spiel. No. We've seen this song and dance before, okay? Win meaningful games, don't get embarrassed, and see if you can beat or have a competitive game against Ohio State. Not beat them, have a competitive game against them, and then come back at me with that whole top 10 mess, please. So, yeah, that's about my Michigan thoughts on that regard.
Yep. Right.
Well, I'll just speak on the Juwan Howard news since I actually brought that up. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was a little bit surprised to see that his name was being mentioned for an NBA job. And look, I know he served as an assistant under Eric Spoelstra with the Miami Heat, but the fact that he had only been at Michigan for 1 year, and he was a former player there, and he seemed happy to be there, and after 1 year jumped to the NBA, that really didn't make a ton of sense to me. So, I mean, I'm not really surprised that he's choosing to stay put. Now, I think the NBA rumors are something that's going to pop up every once in a while, but until there's actually serious noise, I think you just got to take them for what they're worth. They're just rumors, and there's not much to them. They're just more sizzle than steak.
There you go. So, our closing statement segment has emerged. Ed, just take as much time as you need with that closing statement, then we'll turn over to Frank. Ed, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I basically kind of gave away my whole soliloquy in that brief rant, if you want to call it, and passionate plea, whatever you want to call it. But to reiterate what I mentioned before, this type of movement that we're seeing across our nation now, and frankly around the world, it doesn't grow and it doesn't spread unless the right elements, the right cognitive motions of change are in place. If you have the right allies that are willing and able to put in the work, put in the effort, whether you have the substantive needs or not, especially those that have the needs and the money and the power to do so, to make those necessary changes. I'm talking about you, NBA owners. I'm talking about you, NFL owners, all the sports owners, all the billionaires that have the money and the literal power to help make the changes necessary in our communities for the better. This onus is upon you as well. You shouldn't have had to take all your players essentially going on strike to finally say, oh my God, whoa, we need to do something. Stop it. Pay attention to what they've been trying to take a stand for. In this case, take a knee or whatever the case. And it's quite, I think, beautiful poetic justice that all this discussion, all this happening, all this uprising. Take a look and notice at the date, gentlemen. August 26th, exactly 4 years ago to the day that Colin Kaepernick started his protest, his peaceful protest, I might add. 4 years ago to that day, what has changed? What have we seen? Or what have we been realized and enlightened and awakened to what has already been within this country for a long, long, long time? And I think you're seeing a lot of people experiencing that, either first hand, second hand, third hand, or just finally getting a true and more broad perspective of what we, the not so privileged, the not so fortunate, the not so blessed enough, go through on a daily, and I do mean daily, basis. So that's my challenge. That's my honest upon all of you. Are you willing to put in the work, willing to put in the effort, willing to put in the drive? Colin Kaepernick did 4 years ago on this very day. What are they going to say about you, and what will you do now that will be talked about 4 years or 40 years from now?
Yeah, you tell him. Frank, I'll just give you 30 seconds, and then I'll pinch in my closing statement, and that'll be all she wrote. Frank, go ahead.
My closing statement will be a little bit different from what I've said, but it's something that does kind of have some of a personal meaning to me. Paul George of the LA Clippers recently had a great performance in Game 5 last night, but he also mentioned that he had been battling depression, and just want to get out there that depression is real, and if you are battling any mental health issues, talk to people about it. Get help. People are listening. I've mentioned this many times on this show that I am a mental health advocate, so you can always come talk to me. I will listen.
Yep, there you go. My closing statement, it's obvious that the Tigers still played. They almost blew their 7-3 lead. Had they blown it, it would have been completely deserved, especially if they lost, because they did not care about the shootings of Jacob Blake. At least they care about the COVID-19 safety concerns, but come on, the Tigers only cared about themselves. They don't have much dignity, if any, especially not the Ilitch family. And it's driving me up the wall. I surely hope to God that the Ilitches sell the friggin' team as soon as possible, as soon as I want them to. Same with the Red Wings, because Chris Ilitch and his family, they only care about themselves, period. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. We'll talk next week. For Ed Smith and Frank Vashner, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Staples Media. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now, bon appetit. Hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.